Hello, good morning everyone. We are the group 5. So we're gonna discuss about the chapter 6, which is the environmental protection. So to start with, I would like to introduce the objective of this chapter. So this chapter only cater one lesson, which is the global warming. These are the following objective of this chapter. So number 1, define global warming. Number 2, describe global warming. Number 3, give the effects of global warming. Number 4, explain what greenhouse effect is. Number 5, define climate change. Number 6, differentiate mitigation and adaption. Number 7, identify the 7 principles of environment. And lastly, number 8, identify the different environmental laws. So, what is global warming? So, global warming occurs when carbon dioxide, CO2, and other pollutants and greenhouse gases collect in the atmosphere and absorb sunlight and solar radiation that have bounced off the Earth's surface. So basically, global warming is really happening in our surrounding. It causes many phenomena that we are experiencing nowadays that give many casualties in terms of infrastructure, environmental, which is the topic of this chapter, and also the loss of human lives. So this radiation would escape into space, but these pollutants, which can last for years to centuries, trap the heat cause the planet to be hotter and really hotter. This is known as the greenhouse effect. So greenhouse effect is going to be tackled by the next presenter. So I will just focus the global warming. It is also referred to climate change, which is observed century scale rise in advantage temperature of Earth's climate system and related effect according to JELS 2015. So global warming and climate change is somewhat relevant because the warming of the Earth causes the change of our climate, which is so very visible in terms of what is happening around the planet. So multiple lines of specific evidence shown that the climate change is warming. Many observed change since the 1950s are unprecedented in the instrumental temperature records, which extend back to the mid-19th century, and in the paleochemical prox record covering thousands of years. So what shown in the picture that indicated that in the last 50 years the Earth's temperature is really increasing. That's caused alarm to the global temperature and also for the change of climate. So the study shown in the 2013 Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, or which known for the abbreviation of IPCC, that it is extremely likely that human influence has been the dominant cause of the observed warming since the mid-20th century, which is like in the start of 2010 till now. So the rapidly increasing of temperature is somewhat caused by human activities that will be discussed in the next slides of this presentation. Some of the human influence that had been the invention of greenhouse gases such as carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Climate model projections summarized in the report indicate that 21st century. So in the illustration or in the picture or in the models as shown in this video, the indication of the lowest and the highest mentioned scenario. So the red one is the highest and the green one is the lowest. So many scientists find this finding as not disputed by any scientific body of national or international standing. As those findings conclude by the scientific institution, there they also conclude some of the future climate changes. So these are the following. Impacts will differ from region to region. So in which we're experiencing nowadays, the following climate changes and the extremely rise of temperature, we conclude also that global warming rather are not only in our country but also all over the world. Next is increasing global temperature, rising levels rather, changing precipitation and expansion of desert are anticipated effect. So temperature arise as the global warming is expanding. The increase of deserted area caused by displacement of heat is really alarming, as shown in the example picture. The expansion of desert, the sea rising. Next is warming is expected to be greater to land over ocean. So as example of this, the Arctic region, that this region is affecting and over the ocean surface. Next is extremely weather event. As I've said, we are experiencing heavy rains nowadays, caused by this extravagant climate change that um, that is really affecting us. Next is threat to food security and abandonment of populated area due to sea rising levels. So people living in the seashore or sea level area were predicted to leave those places in the future as the sea level is rising. Also, there are possible societal response to global warming. So these are include mitigation by immersion reduction, adaptation to its effect, building resilience to its effect, and lastly, possible future climate engineering. So most countries are parties to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, so also known as the abbreviation of UNFCCC. Whole ultimate objective is to prevent dangerous anthropological climate change. So this party also deepen cuts to emission are required and global warming should be limited to well below 2 degrees Celsius compared to the pre-industrial level, with efforts made to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So effects are also increasingly relevant to the public reaction to global warming and concerns. Effects of global warming are the following. First is melting glaciers, early snow melts, and severe droughts will cause more dramatic water shortage and increase the risk of wildfire. So global warming is known as the increasement in temperature. So we are conclude to have the effect of severe droughts and early snow melts. I know that snow melt is not in our country, but we are experiencing hailstorm caused by this changing of climate. Number 2 is rising sea level will lead to coastal flooding on the seaboard, that like I said in the previous slides about the future climate changes. Number 3 is forests, farms and cities will face troublesome new pests, heat wave, heavy downpours, and increased flooding. All these factors will damage agriculture and fisheries. So as the global warming is increasing and also the climate changes fastly, it will affect many basic necessity like agriculture and fishery, that also the main source of our food security. Number 4 next is disruption of habitat such as coral reefs and alpine meadows could drive many plants and animal species to extinction. So the disruption of habitats caused by the global warming is, I know it is really visualizing to the news that we are hearing nowadays. Number 5, allergy, asthma, infectious disease outbreak will be common. So I know nowadays we are experiencing this disease outbreak that not not by global warming specifically, but it helps the disease to transmit because of the so-called um, heat increasement. And this virus that we're experiencing nowadays is um, is rapidly increasing because of the help of heat increasement. So number 6 is increase in average temperature and temperature extreme. So I know it is so very it's understandable. Number 7, change in climate can cause the polar jet stream. So polar jet stream is a strong wind that also disruption of the wind cycle of our global planet. So as this change of wind cycle, the climate also is changing. Number 8 and the last of the effect of global warming that indicated in our report is global warming may also lead to extreme weather other than cold or heat extreme. So global warming is not only focusing in the increasement of heat, and also it is causes the what I said earlier, that the changes of climate. So like hurricane formation will change, and also more typhoon will become stronger, and many more.
Hi, I'm Claire and I'm going to tackle about greenhouse gases and global warming. Greenhouse gases, this is the molecules that absorb thermal infrared radiation and are in significant enough quantity can force the climate system. So this is a molecule na ga-absorb og thermal infrared or IR radiation dani sa tuang kalibutan. So, other greenhouse gases act as a blanket nga ga-absorb og radiation na mag-prevent nga mahawa mo adto siya sa space. So, this net effect is the gradual heating of Earth's atmosphere surface, a process known as global warming. So, according to Environmental Protection Agency or EPA, greenhouse gases include water vapor, carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide, N2O, and other gases. So, this greenhouse effect combined with the increasing levels of greenhouse gases and the resulting global warming. It is expected to have profound implications. So, taas gid kay siya og kuan. So, according to the near universal consensus of scientists. So, if global warming continues unchecked, it will cause significant events, natural and societal impacts. So, na daghan gyud og mga damage if this global warming continue. Can the greenhouse effect can be reversed? So, many scientists agree that the damage to Earth's atmosphere and climate change is past the point of no return, or that the damage is near the point of no return. So, wala na ibalikan sa damage nga nabuhat sa kalibutan. So, according to Warren, there are 3 options. 1, do nothing and live with the consequences. So, unsa man, mabuhi lang ta dani sa kalibutan nga mag-atubang permis sa consequences. So, sa gakahitabo. And number 2, adapt to the changing climate. Climate includes rising sea levels and related flooding. So, recently lang, di ba, sige nagbaha-baha dani. Labi na dani sa kugman sa merkado nga ga-adapt na lang gid ang mga tao, which is sa mga tindahan ginapatasan nila kay sa tungod anang sa sige inig mo ulan lang gamay Mula lang gamay mo baha na dayon. So nag-adapt yun sila sa climate, sa pag-change sa climate. 3 is the mitigate the impact of climate change by aggressively enacting policies that actually reduce the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So ilas na to daw ang paggamit na to sa carbon dioxide. Like for example is kaning carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is like kanang mga fossil like mag-burn ka o use ka og kanang styrofoam, kanang ligid, maggamit ka gas para magsugnod, o naigiingon nga sabok nga ang ikaduha nga largest gakos og carbon dioxide sa atong atmosphere is the deforestation. So i-reduce na to ni ang atong mga ang atong pagkuan sa carbon dioxide. So other opinion from Mayor College of Pennsylvania, Mr. Peterman, that the damage is to that point yet, and that international agreements and action can save planet's atmosphere. So naagya po yung mga opinion nga gagawas nga masave pag yun nato ang planet's atmosphere, even though daghan na og kuan nga dili na gyud daw siya masave kay until now there is wala pay gabuhaton nga mga action, nay gabuhaton nga action pero dili siya ingon nga gina-pursue gyud siya sa other people, like ilalang buhaton karon, but in the other day mag malimtan na. So currently some scientists are investigating how to re-engineer the atmosphere to reserve global warming, and one theory suggests reducing cirrus clouds that trap heat. So unsa na cirrus clouds? Cirrus clouds is like kanang mura siya og hair pero white na siya, puti siya, mura siya buhok nga gaana sa langit. So so based sa mga scientists nga ilang gi-investigate, kani daw cirrus cloud is mas gatrap sila og ilang ginatrap ang heat. Climate change is a change in the statistical distribution of weather patterns when that change lasts for an extended period of time. So climate change mo do ni siya matawag na gid siya og climate change kung dili na normal ang katas-on sa pagkuan sa weather patterns. So climate change may refer to a change in average weather conditions in time variation of weather around longer term average conditions. Like kusog ba siya, extreme ba siya, more or fewer. And then there are two main policy responses to climate changes: the mitigation and the adaption. So ang mitigation is ilas nato ang atong pag-use, or anang adaption is mo-adapt na lang ta ani nga climate change. So mitigation addresses as the root causes by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, while adaption seeks to lower the risk posed by the consequences of climate changes. Both approaches will be necessary because even if emissions are dramatically decreased in the next decade, adaptation will still be needed to deal with the global change that have already been set in motion. So both is appropriate. Okay? Even if imong elas even if ma-decrease ang kuan, mag-adapt gihapon ta in the near future sa global changes. Adoption measures may be planned in advance or put in place spontaneously in response to a local pressure. They include large-scale infrastructure changes as well behavioral shifts. So, for example, gusto ka mo puyo mo abang dato nga lugar. But then the mga local na gikuan kanila nga kana nga lugar is bahaunon. So, nay tendency nga masudlan or dili. So, nagplana ka in advance nga, kung patasan ako ang balay. So, that is adaption. Ni-adapt na lang ka tungod kay gakahitabo na gina-permit dito nga lugar. So, the IPCC describe vulnerability to climate change as being determined by 3 factors. The exposure to hazard, the sensitivity to those hazards, and the capacity to adapt to those hazards. So, adaption, ma-measure siya nga og makatabang nga ma-reduce ang vulnerability nga ma-allow ang population nga makabenepisyo siya sa mga opportunity tungod sa climate change. So, tungod kay nagkuha naman, like for example kanang maka-benefit gid tinuod kay namang some places dani sa mga dili gid siya mabahaan. So anaon gyud nga isusihon nga kanang napabay available nga mapuy-an dana kay lagi recently lang gyud dani sa tungod-tungod namo nakabahaan na nya dani kay wala. So low-income countries tend to be more vulnerable to climate risk, and some adaptation measures will overlap with existing development programs. But adoption goes beyond just development to include measures to address additional risks, especially caused by climate changes, raising the height of sea defenses. So, as you can see, kaning mga uban dani nga, like for example, dani sa asa ni siya dapat sa ipunan mo ni siya dili sa SPC dapat ka na diya sa kauswagan ilan ang gitasan ang ilahang mga dike ilan ang raising the height kay para kay kawasanan ba yato siya dito ug kanang kuan. So ilan ang yung gitasan. So it is unclear how expensive adoption would cost. Climate change adaptation. Climate change adaptation is the response sa global warming o climate change nga gasik. So ang climate change is gasik nga ma-reduce ang vulnerability sa social o biological system in response of global warming o climate change. So tungod sa sudden change of effect of global warming, so the emissions stabilize relatively soon. Global warming and its effect should last many years, and adaptation would necessary to resulting changes in climate. So adaptive capacity is closely linked to social and economic development according to IPCC. So adaptation to climate mostly costly or expensive. So mahal gid kay siya ba kung mag-adapt ta? Okay. Kagasto gid tag dako. So mostly and costly expensive. So a good example of climate change adaptation is to protect against sea level rise and increase flooding. Communities might build seawalls or relocate buildings to higher ground. So as what I've said earlier, katong nalimot ko asa to siya dapit nga lugar, pero kana dito sa SPC man na siya kanang nana silay seawall. So taas na gyud kayo kay dito gyud daw kuan gyud prone gyud kay sila og baha. So naa sila seawall para inig kanang action na og taas ang tubig dito na lang sila manaka. So ang dani sa mua sa Pugman baloy to kuan Buggo, wala pa siya nabuhatan. So, adaptation to climate is mostly costly expensive. So, wala pa siguro yung budget. Pero kahit itong daghan magid ang namuyo mostly sa dike, manang lisod yun magpahawa og mga tao, labi na og kanang walay mapuyan. So, hope no nga ma-relocate na sila sa mga higher ground, nga dili na sila magpuyo besides sa mga higher risk sa pagba.
Another response to climate change is known as climate change mitigation. It advocates to reduce greenhouse gases emissions or enhance the removal of those gases from the atmosphere. Even the most effective reduction emission, however, would not prevent further climate change impacts, making the needs of adaptation unavoidable. This is the absence of mitigation efforts. The effects of climate change would reach such as magnitude as to make adaptation impossible for some natural ecosystems. It may concerns that adaptation programs might interfere with existing development programs. So, the climate change mitigation Jude is not really um, vulnerable like adoption because as the climate change increases na yung mga butang na dili jud makaya kung magamit og climate change mitigation. So i-adapt jud nila ang adoption kung dili makaya ang mitigation. So climate change mitigation consists of action to limit the magnitude or rate of the long-term climate change. So mitigation kay magkuan lang siya kanang mag-lessen lang siya sa mga possible na long-term na climate change. So makatabang ni siya para iubos ang mga emissions. So climate change mitigation generally involves reduction in human emission of greenhouse effects, so like ang giyon ganina. Mitigation may also be achieved by increasing the capacity of carbon sinks, examples through reforestation. Mitigation policy may substantially reduce the risk associated with human-induced global warming. So, mitigation reduce the risk of mga human activities na cause sa global warming. So, like like sa kaning mga floodings na nangitabo sa tuwa cause sa human activity like mga bara na basura or sigpotlon na mga kahoy. Example of mitigation includes phasing out fossil fuels by switching to low carbon energy source. So like nahitabo po karon na mga panahon na imbis na kanang rely sila sa oil sa mga sakinan na-invent ang mga electric bikes, electric cars, and etc. So such as renewable and nuclear energy, so kung yung ganina, and expanding forests and other things to remove greater amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So, like karon sa atong subject na NSTP, Cwts, na mga program like tree growing, tree planting, para mutaas or ma-expand ang mga kalasangan, forest. Climate engineering and improving the insulation of building also include, so like kanang mga building ng gamit og material na dili eco-friendly kay isa po na sa mga kanang rason para mo increase ang global warming and climate change. So kabalo po ta sa mga news na mga balita na kanang kay gamit sila mga eco-friendly na mga materials para mag-build sa mga strong and long-term ng mga balay na affordable po para sa tanan. So, for the next slide, naro ang mga common o differences sa mitigation o adaptation. Mitigation, so like sa giyong ganina, action to reduce emissions that cause climate change. So, sustainable transportation, mga e-bike, electric car like Tesla. Next, energy and efficiency, so solar panels, and other sources energy efficiency. So, clean energy. So, like I said, kanang solar panels, windmills. So for the adaptation like sa gitakol sa gitakol ni Clair ganina, so action to manage the risk of climate change impact. So like disaster management and business contrary, magplano said ni Clair. Next is infrastructure upgrades. So katong gikan gyud ni Clair na patason ang balay kung di man ay baha, ipatason nila kana sila na mo renovate sa ilang balay depende sa surrounding nila. The next is flood protection, or like sa akong example karon lang jud. And for the common is new energy system, education, water conservation, and natural environment.
And now we are here on the Environmental Principles of Nature by Donna Pastireyes from the Environmental Studies Institute, Miriam College, and it has 7 principles. First is that nature knows the best. This is the most basic principle of all principles. Kita humans have to understand and respect the nature and follow its rules, because if you want to ensure a healthy, growing, and steady supply of resources, kailangan dili ta go against the natural processes, kasi if we humans cause any disruption in the cycle of nature, this can bring imbalance to our ecosystem. Kabalo mo, our nature knows everything. Sometimes it knows what is best for us. And second, all forms of life are important. Each organism plays a fundamental role in nature. Every species has its own purpose to our nature. Sa tuwa, the industry and agriculture depend on this biological diversity, for it has significant effect to us humans and animals. The third principle is everything is connected to everything else. Okay? This principle has the concept of ecosystem, like kanang ang ecosystem daw kay a living and non-living organisms nga nag-interact with each other to ensure that the system is preserved. Numduman nato nga dapat that every part of this kay sacred. Different kind belong to a certain groups. So in order to value the earth, we must teach the children about it, since the wind gave our children the spirit of life. Fourth, everything changes. Lahat magbabago. Lahat mababago. Nothing will stay the same because nothing is forever. Number 5, everything goes somewhere. O tulad atong basura, mukalit ragwala sa atong pananaw. Kay atong basura mo adto man og sa certain place, transfer sa lain lugar nga wata kabalo. Because the world is revolving, the world is changing. So number 6, ours is a finite earth. Excuse me. Our earth has its own limits, although it provides infinite resources if we took care much about it. So 7, nature is beautiful and we are stewards of God's creation. As we are the creation of God, we humans must protect the earth. Kanang kinahanglan nato siya ampingan. Huwag abusuin ang kalikasan at bigyan ito ng kahalagahan. Ginawa tayo ng Diyos upang matulungan natin ang nature para sa susunod na henerasyon, para ito din ay magagampanan. Magtinabangit ang tanan ba? Ano na good? And then, the environmental laws. It is also known as the Environmental and Natural Resource Law, a term that refers to a network of treaties, regulations, and common and customary laws that address the effects of human natural environmental activity. Environmental law has become such an important issue. People should be aware on what are allowed and what are prohibited in relation to the actions they take towards the environment. Paalala lang, to those who violate the environmental laws, katong nilabagid sa mga environmental laws, naa sila'y consequences kung ilang abusuhon ng atong nature. Kay di man na maayo. Kay kung kailangan gid nato ang pingan ng atong nature para gid ma-preserve pa ba, makagamit pa taan na. Kay ang nature baya kay ga-provide sa atong oxygen. Nya what if day wala na yung mga puno ana in the future? Di na ta kahingaan na. Paglisod na ta og
breathe sa kuan kay more on pollution naman atong ma-inhale sa atong body. So kay according man pod sa Philippine environmental law and government regulations are in place to protect the environment and help people in general.
The PD 1586 requires private company and government to prepare an environmental impact system. The objective of this law is to maintain the balance between environment and socio-economic development. Second is RA 8749, Clear Air Act of 1999. This law aims to achieve and maintain healthy air for Filipinos. Third is RA 9725, Philippine Clean Water Act of 2004. This law aims to protect the country's water bodies from land-based pollution sources like industries and establishments. Fourth is RA 9003. It provides the legal framework for the country's systematic solid waste management program that shall ensure protection of public health and environment. This act also ensures the proper segregation, collection, transport, storage, treatment, and disposal of solid waste. Next is RA 9512, an act to promote environmental awareness through environmental education and for other purposes. The state shall promote national awareness of the role of natural resources in economic growth and the importance of environmental conservation and ecological balance towards sustained national development. Next is RA 8550, an act providing for the development, management, and conservation of the fisheries and aquatic resources. It aims to deter and eliminate illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. RA 6969, the act was carried out to control, supervise, and regulate activities on toxic chemicals and hazardous waste, unauthorized transport or dumping into water of sewage or solid waste are prohibited. RA 9789 is the policy of the state to afford full protection and to fulfill human needs while maintaining the quality of the natural environment for current and future generations. Forest protection is the preservation or improvement of a forest that is affected by abuse, like illegal loggings or out of balance nature. There are lots of laws that protects our forests, like RA 3701. It is an act that discourages destruction of forests. Water supply is the process of providing water in a systematic way through installed pumps and pipelines. To ensure safety, water undergoes through a process called sanitation. The Philippines' main source of water is river, lakes, dam, etc. The lakes are utilized mainly for fish cultivation. Dams are mainly used for water storage, water supply, irrigation, regulation of flood, and hydropower. Angat, Ipo, Lamesa are the main sources of water supply of Metro Manila. Ambukula Dam in Baguio, Magat Dam in Isabela. Providing clean water coupled with health and hygiene education is perhaps the most effective measure we can take in preventing an infectious disease. WASH stands for water, sanitation, and hygiene. Poor WASH condition leads to diarrhea, which is one of the major causes of death among children below 5 years. Pollution prevention is a major global concern because of its harmful effects on people's health and the environment. Every person has something to contribute to advance effective pollution prevention awareness. If there is no pollutant, there is no. The youth plays a vital role in the environment protection and management. Future generation will also be affected by the decision. Young people can play an active role in protecting and improving the environment. Youth are backbone of the nation. They can change the future of the society with their well-being and encourage behavior. The environment is simply defined as our surroundings, including both living and non-living things. problems are rising day by day, and everyone is concerned about global warming and climate change. There are lots of solutions to minimize the pollution, but youths are more interested in other things. Youth have a role to play